Lena Brooks stood in the mirrored elevator, her reflection staring back at her like a stranger. Her palms were damp, her heartbeat quick and loud in her chest. She tried to steady her breathing, repeating the words her mentor had told her that morning. He's just another client. Breathe. Be professional. But as the elevator glided higher, she knew this was not just another client. Billionaires didn't live in buildings where the floors were made of glass and the air smelled faintly of wealth and loneliness. When the doors opened, she stepped into silence. The penthouse stretched before her, massive windows framing a view of New York City painted in gold by the setting sun. Every surface gleamed. Every object seemed chosen for perfection. It was beautiful, but cold, like a museum where nothing was allowed to feel human. A tall man stood by the window, one hand resting on a cane. Gabriel Vance. She'd seen his face in business magazines, brilliant, ruthless, untouchable. In person, he looked even more intimidating. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead, his jaw was sharp as if carved from stone, and his eyes, stormy grey, carried the weight of too many sleepless nights. He didn't turn around when she spoke. "Mr. Vance, I'm Lena Brooks, the physiotherapist your doctor recommended." "Leave the formalities," he said quietly. "If you can help me walk again, I don't care what you call me." His voice was deep, but there was an edge beneath it, a hint of pain or maybe anger. Lena set her bag down, trying to steady her trembling hands. "I'll do my best," she said softly. He turned then, and the breath caught in her throat. A faint scar ran from his temple down to his jaw, disappearing beneath the collar of his shirt. It didn't mar his beauty. It made him look more human, more fragile in a way that scared her. His eyes studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment. "You're younger than I expected." "I get that a lot," she replied, forcing a small smile. "But I'm good at what I do." "We'll see," he murmured, and sat down. She began the session, her voice steady as she guided him through gentle movements. But his muscles tensed under her touch. He winced, jaw tightening. "Stop." "I'm sorry," she said quickly, pulling her hands back. He looked away, gripping the armrest. "Everyone says they can help. None of them do. They all make it worse." Lena hesitated. Then she spoke softly. "Maybe it's not about strength yet. Maybe it's about trust." That made him glance up, his expression unreadable. For the first time, his eyes softened. "Trust," he repeated, as if the word itself hurt to say. She nodded and tried again, slower this time, gentler. Her hands moved with care, almost like a whisper. She talked about small things to fill. The silence, music, the view, the way the sunset made everything look softer. Slowly, the tension in his shoulders eased. When she brushed her fingers against the scar on his arm, he flinched but didn't pull away. "You don't have to hide the pain," she said quietly. His voice was almost a whisper. "I'm not hiding the pain, Miss Brooks. I'm hiding the past." Lena froze, sensing she had stepped into something deeper than therapy, but before she could respond, he looked away. "There's a file on that table. Do not touch it. Ever." She nodded, her heart racing. The leather file sat there, locked with a silver clasp. Its presence filled the room like a secret. By the end of the session, Gabriel's breathing had steadied. When she started to pack her things, his voice stopped her. "You're different," he said, so softly she almost missed it. "Everyone else hurts me. You don't." Lena met his eyes. There was no arrogance now, only quiet exhaustion. For the first time, she saw the man behind the billionaire, the one who lived alone in this palace of glass and silence. As she left the penthouse, the city lights flickered to life below her. The elevator doors closed, and she let out the breath she'd been holding. Somewhere between the marble and the moonlight, she knew one thing for sure. This job was going to change everything. Lena woke up the next morning with the image of Gabriel Vance still haunting her thoughts. His voice, The pain in his eyes, the way he had said those quiet words, "You are different. Everyone else hurts me. You don't." It echoed inside her like a whisper she could not forget. She told herself to stop thinking about it, to keep things professional. But her heart had already made its own secret promise. When she arrived at the penthouse for the second session, the air felt different, colder, maybe heavier. The security guard at the door gave her a strange look, as if he knew something she didn't. And when the elevator opened, Gabriel was already waiting at the top floor, cane in hand, suit darker than last night, eyes sharper, but there was something else there too, something restless. "You came back," he said. It was not a question, more like a statement. He was testing her. "Yes," she replied. "I said I would." His gaze lingered for a second too long before he turned toward the glass wall. The skyline burned gold with morning light. She unpacked her therapy tools quietly. He stood near the window, his reflection, a ghost in the glass. "Have you ever wondered," he said suddenly, "how a single choice can destroy everything?" Lena froze. She sensed this wasn't small talk. He continued, still facing the city. "One turn of the wheel, one wrong trust, and your whole life." "Abrams," she wanted to ask what he meant, but before she could, he turned and the mask was back, the cold distance of the billionaire. "Let's begin," he said, as she worked through the therapy. His body was tense, resisting the stretches. She spoke softly, guiding his breathing. His muscles fought against her hands, as if his body refused to remember what peace felt like. She adjusted his arm gently, and for the first time their eyes met, without walls between them. His expression softened. Then suddenly, he winced in pain and grabbed her wrist too tightly. "Gabriel, you are hurting yourself," she whispered. His hand trembled and released her almost instantly. "I am sorry," he said, voice rough from shame. He looked away. She saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear not of her, but of losing control. When the session ended, Lena stepped into the hallway to grab her notes. The housekeeper passed by carrying a tray and accidentally knocked a folder off the console. Papers spilled everywhere. Lena bent to help, but froze. One photo had fallen face up. It showed Gabriel before the accident, standing with a woman, smiling the kind of smile that belonged to another life. The same woman appeared again in another picture, only this time the photo was torn in half. The woman's face burned away at the edge, as if destroyed deliberately. She quickly put it back, but not before noticing the initials carved faintly on the photo frame: VC, whoever she was. Gabriel had made sure she was erased when she returned to the room. He was gone, the chair empty, his cane leaning by the table. She looked around confused, then saw the door to his study slightly open. Curiosity tugged at her, but the warning from last night echoed in her head. "Do not touch the file." She hesitated, then stepped closer. The study was dimly lit, lined with glass shelves and security locks, and there it was, the silver-locked file lying under a single spotlight like an unspoken secret. Her heart pounded. Maybe it held the truth about his scars or the woman in the photo. She reached out, but before her fingers touched it, a voice cut through the silence. "Do not open," that his tone was sharper than she had ever heard. She spun around. Gabriel stood at the doorway, eyes dark, almost dangerous. "You are not here to fix my past, Miss Brooks. You are here to fix my legs." Lena's face flushed. "I was just putting away the folder from outside." He studied her for a long moment, the tension thick enough to choke on. Then his expression softened again. "Almost guilty. I am sorry. I should not have raised my voice." "It is fine," she said quietly, but it wasn't fine. Something about that locked file and the haunted look in his eyes told her his pain ran far deeper than broken bones. As she gathered her own things to leave, he said something that made her stop. "You think I am cruel, don't you?" "No," she said, after a pause. "I think you are scared of being human again." He stared at her as if she had read a truth he had buried for years for the first time since. She met him. Gabriel smiled, a real, fragile, almost broken smile. As she left the penthouse, she looked once more at the towering building reflecting the clouds and thought maybe the richest man in the city wasn't living in a palace at all. Maybe. He was trapped inside a glass cage, waiting for someone to open the door. The storm began, just as Lena reached the penthouse that evening, the rain beating hard against the glass walls of the city. The sky bruised with thunder. Gabriel's assistant had already left early. The building felt emptier than usual, as if the wind itself was holding its breath when she stepped inside. The lights flickered once, then died, leaving only the glow of lightning flashing across the floor to ceiling windows. Gabriel's voice came from the shadows. "Power is out. Backup generator. Takes a minute to start." She found him sitting in his chair by the window, still in his workout clothes, hair damp from therapy sweat and stormlight tracing the sharp line of his jaw. He looked younger, somehow less like the billionaire the world, feared more like a man stranded in his own loneliness. "Do you want me to reschedule?" she asked. "No," he said quickly. "Stay." The silence between them thickened with the sound of rain. The city far below vanished into mist. "You ever notice," he said finally, "how quiet the world gets when the lights go out? It is the only time I can think." Lena pulled out a candle from her bag and lit it. The small flame flickered, casting gold on both their faces. When she looked at him, she saw pain and beauty tangled together, like light and shadow. She smiled gently. "Maybe the world goes quiet so people can finally hear themselves." He gave a low chuckle, rare and rough. "You sound like someone who knows what silence feels like." She did not answer. She simply knelt beside him, beginning the stretches. The light trembled against their faces, her fingers brushing against the scar near his collarbone. His muscles jumped under her touch, but he did not stop her. "Your body remembers the accident," she said softly. "Sometimes. Healing is not about movement, it is about forgiveness." He turned to look at her eyes, deep grey, full of storms. "What do you know about forgiveness? More than you think," she whispered. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain. He studied her face. The candle reflected in her eyes. Then he reached out slowly, his hand trembling not from pain but fear. "May I?" he asked, barely above a whisper. She nodded. He touched her cheek with the back of his fingers, gentle, hesitant, as if afraid she might disappear. The warmth of his skin sent shivers through her spine. "You are not like the others," he said. "They pity me. You don't." Why Lena swallowed hard, because pity breaks people, kindness heals them, and you don't need pity. "Gabriel, you need peace." Something changed in his eyes, the kind of change that happens when a person realizes they have been starving for something they can finally name. He leaned closer, the air between them heavy with electricity. The candlelight danced against their faces. A single inch separated them, but then a loud bang echoed from the hallway. Lena jerked back, heart racing. Gabriel grabbed his cane, standing slowly. "Stay here," he said firmly, his voice all steel again. She tried to protest, but he was already gone. She waited, her pulse thundering in her ears. A few moments later, he returned, his expression unreadable, just the wind. He said, though his tone carried a strange tension. When she helped him back into his chair, he was quiet, distant again. The vulnerability from moments ago buried beneath armor. She decided not to ask about the noise. Instead, she began packing her things. But before she reached the door, he spoke quietly without turning around. "When I said it was just the wind, I lied. Someone has been breaking into my servers for weeks. I think they want something that is locked away." Lena froze, remembering the silver file on his desk, the one he warned her never to touch. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you have already seen too much," he said, his voice calm but heavy. "I thought I could keep my past buried, but it keeps finding me." As lightning struck again outside their eyes, met in the dim glow of the candle, his voice softened, "And for the first time it cracked when I look at you. I forget what fear feels like, and that is dangerous." Lena's throat tightened. She wanted to say something but couldn't. The lights flickered back on. Breaking the spell, she gathered her coat and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, she saw his reflection in the mirror staring after her eyes, full of something she could not name. Not love, not yet, but something powerful enough to change everything. The next evening, Lena almost didn't go back. The memory of Gabriel's touch, the fear in his eyes, the whisper about someone breaking into his servers, it all played in her mind like a warning. She wasn't sure if she was walking into a home or a storm, but something inside her, a quiet pull stronger than fear, made her press the elevator button again. When the doors opened, the penthouse was bathed in a strange, quiet light. The rain had stopped, but the clouds outside hung low, pressing against the windows. Gabriel was by the piano this time, his cane leaning beside him, fingers moving. Across the keys in slow, broken melody, it was not a song. It was pain turned into sound. She stood there listening until he noticed her. "I did not know you played," she said softly. His lips curved in a half-smile. "I did not know I still could," he replied. The melody faded into silence as he gestured toward the chair. Today he looked different. The sharpness in his voice was gone, replaced by something weary and human. They began the session. His muscles tighter than before, she worked carefully, guiding. His movements breathing with him, their hands brushed again. Her pulse jumped. He noticed she tried to pull back, but his fingers caught her wrist, not roughly, just enough to stop her. "You don't have to be afraid of me, Lena," he said quietly. She shook her head. "I am not afraid of you, Gabriel. I am afraid of what this is." He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Sometimes what we fear most is exactly what will save us." He released her and leaned back, eyes closing as she continued the therapy. She could see the scars across his shoulder, faint but deep, each one holding a story he never told. As her hand moved across the scar near his neck, he flinched. She stopped instinctively. "Sorry, does it hurt?" His voice came out low. "It always hurts, but when you touch it, the pain changes." Something in his tone made her heart ache. She had seen patients break down before, but this was different. He was a man who built empires, yet could barely hold his own memories together. She wanted to ask about the woman in the burned photo, the one whose ghost seemed to haunt every corner of his life, but before she could, he spoke as if reading her mind. "You saw her picture, didn't you?" She froze. "How did you know?" His eyes opened sharp again. "I always know. When someone looks where they shouldn't," she swallowed. "I did not mean to pry, it fell. I just wanted to help." He studied her face long enough for her to feel stripped bare. Then his expression softened. "That woman was my fiancée. Her name was Vanessa. She betrayed me and left me to die the night of the crash. Lena's breath caught, left you to die." She repeated the words, felt too cruel, too impossible. He nodded. "Once we were driving home from a gala, she was behind the wheel. We argued about something small. I remember headlights then, glass breaking, and fire she escaped. She sold my designs, my company, everything to the people who wanted me gone." Lena's hand trembled. She wanted to reach out to him, but stopped, afraid he would pull away. Instead, he took her hand first, his grip firm but gentle. "You do not need to pity me, Lena, but when you look at me, I don't feel broken anymore." Her chest tightened at the sound of her name on his lips. She looked at him. The storm of his pain reflected. In his eyes, she whispered, "I am sorry for what she did to you, no." He said, his voice low, "I am sorry for what I let her turn me into." Before either of them could speak again, the lights flickered. Then a sharp alarm echoed through the penthouse. The security. A panel near the door flashed red. Gabriel stood with effort, leaning on his cane. "Someone is here." Lena's heart raced. Who? He didn't answer. He just moved toward the hallway, pressing a button that locked the inner doors. His face pale but controlled. He reached into the drawer beside the couch and pulled out a small gun. She froze. "What are you doing?" He looked at her, calm and deadly, "Protecting what's left of my life." Seconds later, the alarm stopped. Silence again, only the hum of his breath. She realized his hand was shaking, not from fear, but memory. He lowered the gun and turned back to her. The threat had passed, but something else had shifted between them. He walked slowly closer, his eyes never leaving hers, his voice softer. Now I do not. Want you caught in my ghosts? Lena, she stepped closer too, voice trembling. Maybe your ghosts are what make you real. Gabriel, maybe they are what led me here. He reached up and touched her face again this time, not hesitant. His thumb brushed her cheek. Tracing the line of her jaw, she did not move. She couldn't when he spoke again. It was almost a confession. You make me forget the darkness. The air between them grew warm and electric. She felt it deep in her chest when he leaned in their foreheads. Almost touched, his whisper was rough, dangerous. Stay. If you leave now, everything will go back to silence. Her breath caught the world outside, faded, until there was only him, his scars, his strength, his pain. She whispered, I am here and I am not going anywhere. He closed his eyes as if her words were a prayer, and for the first time since the crash, Gabriel Vance allowed himself to breathe. The next morning, sunlight poured through the glass walls, turning the penthouse into a sea of gold, but the warmth did little to chase away the storm that still lingered inside Gabriel's eyes. Lena arrived early, her stomach tied in nervous knots. She had barely slept. She kept replaying the night before his touch, his confession, the sound of the alarm. Everything about it felt dangerous and fragile, like walking on glass. When the elevator doors opened, she found the house silent. No staff. No sound except the faint hum of machines. Gabriel stood on the balcony, staring out at the skyline, a file clutched in his hand. The same silver file he had warned her never to touch. His knuckles were white against the metal clasp. He turned. When he heard her, his expression unreadable. I could not sleep, he said finally. You should not have come back. It is not safe for you anymore. Lena frowned. What are you talking about? Safe from what? Gabriel closed the file and set it on the table, his voice low. Someone broke into my server room last night. The alarms were not a malfunction. They were inside the building. Her pulse quickened. Did they take anything? His gaze met hers. Not yet, but they were looking for something that only exists in this file, the company, the money. None of it matters compared to what is inside that. She wanted to ask, what could possibly be that important? But before she could, he moved closer until she could feel the heat from his body. You do not need to be in part of this, Lena, he said quietly. I hired you to heal me, not to end up in my war. She looked up at him, refusing to back away. Maybe I was meant to do both. The corner of his mouth lifted into the faintest smile, brave words for someone trembling inside, he said softly. She swallowed and forced herself to hold his gaze. Someone has to remind you that you are still human, Gabriel. He exhaled a shaky breath. His hand lifted almost on its own, brushing a strand of her hair away from her face the moment. Stretched between them, heavy and electric when his fingers touched her cheek. She leaned into the warmth without meaning to. He hesitated, but didn't pull away. Then the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Both of them froze. Gabriel grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind him. His voice dropped. Stay quiet. The door creaked open and a man in a black suit stepped inside carrying a briefcase, his voice calm, almost too calm. Mr. Vance, I told you. We would talk again. Gabriel's eyes hardened. Get out before I throw you out. The man ignored him and set the briefcase on the table, opening. It slowly inside was a stack of photographs, each one showing Gabriel, his car, the crash, the fire, and finally a blurred image of a woman that looked eerily like Lena. Gabriel's jaw clenched. What is this? The man smiled. Insurance, Mr. Vance. Your secrets are valuable, but so is your silence sign, the merger papers, or we release everything. Lena's blood ran cold. She didn't understand. All she saw was Gabriel's face tightening with rage and fear. She stepped forward. Stop this. You can't threaten him like that. The man's eyes flicked toward her. You must be the therapist, he said with a smirk. You have no idea what kind of man you are saving. Gabriel moved. Before she could speak again, grabbing the briefcase and slamming it shut. You have 1 minute to leave. The man's smile vanished. He picked up his case and walked out quietly, but his parting words lingered. The past never stays buried After the door closed, Gabriel's hands were shaking. He turned away, breathing hard. Lena touched his arm gently. Gabriel, who was that? He didn't answer at first when he finally spoke. His voice was low, almost broken. Someone who once called himself my partner. Someone who betrayed me and took everything when I refused to sell what I built. She looked at the file on the table, the file that seemed to hold all his ghosts. He followed her gaze and sighed. You are wondering what is in there, aren't you? She nodded slowly. He opened it and slid one document toward her, a photograph of a woman holding a newborn, wrapped in white cloth. Beneath it, a certificate labeled confidential. Lena's throat tightened. Gabriel said quietly, she was pregnant the night of the crash. I thought the baby died with her, but 2 months ago I received proof she had the child and sold him to cover her debts. I have been trying to find him ever since. Tears stung Lena's eyes. Gabriel, I am so sorry. He looked at her eyes, glassy with emotion. I do not deserve your pity, but I am tired of carrying this alone. You make me forget how heavy it is. She stepped closer, touching his face gently, her fingers tracing the line of his scar. Then for the first time she kissed him. It was not planned or polite. It was raw, full of everything they had been too afraid to say. When she finally pulled away, he whispered against her lips, You should have left me when you had the chance. She smiled faintly. Maybe I never wanted to leave. Maybe I was meant to help you find more than just your strength. He looked at her for a long, silent moment, then pulled her into his arms and held her tightly, the file still open on the table behind them, its truth waiting like a shadow between love and danger. The morning after the kiss, everything in Lena's life felt different. She woke to a silence that was not empty, but heavy with meaning. Every sound from the city seemed far away, her mind still replaying the moment Gabriel's lips touched. Hers, it had not been just a kiss. It had been surrender and something deeper, something that scared her because it felt too real. When she reached the penthouse later that day, the guard at the front entrance stopped her, apologetic but firm. Mr. Vance left instructions that no one was to enter today. She frowned. Did something happen? The guard hesitated, only said there were men from the company here this morning, corporate security and lawyers. They left not long ago. Her stomach dropped. She tried calling Gabriel, but his phone went straight to voicemail. After several attempts, she finally sent a short message. Gabriel, please tell me you're all right. I am worried. Hours passed with no reply. By the time evening came, Lena could no longer sit. Still, she went to his office downtown, hoping to find him there. The receptionist looked up nervously. Mr. Vance is not seeing anyone today, she said softly. He fired half the board this afternoon, then locked himself inside his private suite upstairs. Lena's heart pounded. She took the elevator anyway. Ignoring the protests, when the doors opened to the top floor, she found the office dark except for one lamp. Gabriel sat at his desk, the silver file open in front of him, his eyes hollow like he had been staring into a ghost. He didn't look surprised to see her. He only said, You shouldn't have come. You have been avoiding me all day, she said quietly, and people downstairs looked terrified. What is going on? He closed the file and leaned back, his voice flat. I sold everything. Ward Technologies, the patents, the buildings. It's gone. Lena froze. You did what? He met her eyes, and for the first time she saw the truth behind them. They were not the eyes of a businessman. They were the eyes of a man about to burn his world to the ground. Vanessa and her people wanted my designs. I gave them nothing, so they stole it. Now they have my son, Lena. He whispered the last words, breaking something inside him. I received a message this morning, a video. He turned his laptop toward her. The screen showed a child, maybe 6 years old, dark hair, green eyes. He looked too much like Gabriel for it to be coincidence. The video was grainy. A woman's voice spoke off camera. Do as we say, or you will never see him again. Lena covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. Oh God, Gabriel, you have to go to the police. He shook his head. They won't help. These people are untouchable. Every second I wait puts him in more danger. She stepped closer. her hand finding his arm. "We will. Find him together. I won't let you do this alone." He looked at her, his expression torn between love and fear. "Lena, if you stay, they will come for you too. You don't understand what kind of people they are." She lifted her chin stubbornly. "I don't. I care. I already made my choice the night I kissed you." For a moment he said nothing. Then he stood walking around the desk and pulling her into his arms, his voice rough against her ear. "If anything happens to you, I will never forgive myself." She pulled back and looked up at him. "Then don't let anything happen," she whispered. "We fight this together." Just then, a knock echoed through the glass door. Both turned. The receptionist's trembling voice came from the hall. "Sir, there's someone here who says she knows you." Before Gabriel could answer, the door opened and a woman stepped in, tall, elegant eyes sharp as blades. Vanessa Cole. Gabriel's entire body went rigid. Vanessa smiled, cold and practiced. "You always did have a weakness for kind eyes," she said, glancing at Lena. Lena felt her pulse race. So this was her, the ghost that haunted every shadow she had felt since the first day. "What do you want?" Gabriel asked, his tone deadly calm. Vanessa set her purse down with slow precision. "I came to make you an offer. Return to the company, sign the merger, and I will tell you where your son is. Refuse, and you will lose more than your fortune." "You kidnapped my child," Gabriel said through clenched teeth. "You are a monster." Vanessa's smile did not. "Wave monsters survive," she replied. Lena stepped forward, anger sparking in her chest. "You would use a child for this. You don't deserve to even speak his name." Vanessa's eyes narrowed, and for a second her control slipped a flicker of something raw and hateful passing across her face. She turned to leave but stopped at the door. "Think carefully. Gabriel, you have 48 hours. Then she was gone. The door closed behind her. The room felt like it was suffocating. Gabriel sat down heavily, his hands trembling. Lena knelt beside him, pressing his hand between hers. "We will get him back, Gabriel, I promise." He looked at her, eyes wet with fury. "I don't know how yet, but if I have to burn down every empire in this city to do it, I will." Outside, thunder rolled through the night. The storm had returned, and this time it carried something darker than rain. The beginning of a war that would test every limit of love and survival. The next 48 hours felt like a lifetime for Lena. Every minute stretched thin, with fear and anticipation. Gabriel had not slept. He had barely eaten, his entire focus locked on the computer screens that covered the penthouse walls, lines of encrypted code flashing like heartbeats of a machine possessed. He was trying to trace Vanessa's message, to find the signal that would lead to his son. Lena moved quietly through the apartment, watching him from the doorway. He looked different now, sharper, colder, his eyes darker than the night outside. She could see the man he must have been before she entered his life, ruthless, unstoppable, and dangerous. Finally he spoke, without looking up. "I found her trail. She is using one of the private servers in Monaco. Her people are hiding the boy offshore under another." Naomi's voice was calm, but every word carried fire. Lena stepped closer. "What are you going to do?" He turned to her with a look that made her heart tighten. "I am going to bring him home. But I cannot go through the law. I will have to go through them." She shook her head. "Gabriel, no, you cannot handle this alone." He stared at her for a long time, then said quietly, "I am not asking for permission, Lena. I am asking you to promise me something. If I don't make it back, you will find him and tell him who." "I was before the darkness." Her chest ached. She grabbed his hand, refusing to let go. "Don't say that you will make it back, and I am going with you." He opened his mouth to argue, but she silenced him with one look. "I am not leaving you. You said I was. Different now, let me prove it." The plane left that night, the city lights shrinking beneath them as the world turned silver with clouds. Gabriel sat beside her silent, his fingers tapping on his phone, sending encrypted messages to someone she did not know. Lena tried to steady her breathing, but every mile they flew closer to danger. when they landed in Monaco. Dawn was breaking, the sea glittered with cruel beauty. Gabriel's contact was waiting. A quiet man with a scar down his cheek. He handed Gabriel a small envelope. Inside was a photo of a villa on a cliff and a single word scrawled on the back: midnight. They spent the day in hiding in a small rented apartment overlooking the harbour. Lena could feel Gabriel's tension growing with every passing hour. She watched him pace his hand, brushing the gun hidden under his jacket. "You were never supposed to see this side of me," he said finally, his voice low. She walked to him, resting a hand on his arm. "Maybe I was supposed to be here. To remind you that even when you fight, you are still human." For a moment, he let the mask fall and his hand came up to cup her face. "You have no idea how much I need you," he whispered. Then he kissed her, a deep, desperate kiss that felt like a promise. And a goodbye all at once. When the clock struck midnight, they moved through the shadows toward the villa, the air thick with salt and danger. Gabriel's steps were steady, his focus razor sharp. Lena followed close behind her, heart pounding. They slipped. Through a side gate, the guards distracted by the roar of the waves from inside, came the sound of faint crying. Gabriel froze. It was a child's voice, his son. He moved faster now, silent as a ghost, pushing open the door to a dark corridor. At the end was a locked room. He broke it open without hesitation, and there he was, the boy sitting on the floor, small, scared, and clutching a stuffed bear. The moment Gabriel dropped to his knees and pulled him into his arms, Lena felt her own tears fall. The boy buried his face against his father's chest, whispering, "Daddy," over and over again. Gabriel closed his eyes, his voice shaking. "I found you. I am here. I will never let anyone take you again." But the reunion was cut short by the sound of footsteps. Outside, harsh voices shouting, they were discovered. Gabriel pushed Lena toward the back door. "Take him, go now. I am not leaving without you," she said fiercely. "Go, I will follow," he shouted. She hesitated, then grabbed the boy and ran through the narrow path behind the villa. Gunfire erupted, the night tearing apart with chaos. Lena ran until her lungs burned, finally ducking behind a stone wall near the cliff, her arms wrapped around the boy. She listened for Gabriel, but the only sound was the wind. Then through the dark, she saw him emerging from the smoke, limping but alive. His shirt torn, his eyes blazing. He reached them, grabbed her hand, and they ran together toward the car, waiting near the docks behind them. The villa burst into flames, lighting up the ocean like a nightmare ending. On the flight home, Gabriel held his son asleep in his arms. Lena watched the fire in the distance fade into clouds. He looked at her across the dim cabin, his voice rough. "I thought I lost everything, but tonight I found my future." She smiled, softly touching his scar. "You found your heart, Gabriel, and now it is time to heal it once and for all." He leaned back, closing his eyes for the first time since the crash. Peace washed over his face. Outside the window, the first light of morning broke across the horizon, a new dawn for a man who had finally escaped the shadows. The jet touched down in New York before sunrise. Rain misted across the runway, turning everything into a blur of silver light. Gabriel stepped off first, his son still asleep in his arms. Lena followed close behind, exhausted but alert, her heart still racing from the chaos of the night before they had escaped the fire, but not the danger. By the time they reached the penthouse, the city was waking up, sirens in the distance, traffic humming like nothing had happened, but inside, the air was heavy with unease. Gabriel carried the boy to the guest room and tucked him into bed, his movements slow, careful, almost afraid the child might vanish. If he blinked, Lena watched from the doorway. "He looks like you," she whispered. Gabriel turned, his voice soft and raw. "I keep waiting to wake up and find out this is a dream." She stepped into the room, brushing a hand over the boy's hair. "It is real. Gabriel, you did it. You brought him home." He nodded, but his eyes were distant. "This is not over. Vanessa will come for him, for both of you. She always finishes what she starts." That night, Lena stayed in the guest room across the hall. She couldn't sleep. The sound of rain tapping the windows reminded her of gunfire. She slipped out quietly and found Gabriel in the living room, staring at the city lights, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. "You should rest," she said, walking closer. He didn't. "And turn. If I close my eyes, I see that villa burning. I see her face in the fire. She will not stop until I am destroyed, Lena, until she takes everything left of me. Then let her try." Lena said calmly. He looked up at her, surprised. "You don't understand. She's not just one person anymore. She's a machine with money and reach. She will come for the boy, and when she does, she will use you to hurt me." Lena shook her head. "I'm not afraid of her, Gabriel. But you should be afraid of losing yourself. You already gave up your company. Don't give up who you are." He stared at her for a long time, and something in his expression softened. "You make it sound like I am worth saving." She smiled gently. "You are, even if you don't believe it yet." He set the glass down, stood slowly, and took a step closer. Their eyes locked, the tension between them thick as thunder. She could feel the heat of him, the storm of everything unsaid. Gabriel's voice dropped to a whisper. "When you look at me, I remember what peace feels like, then remember it." She whispered back, his hand lifted, touching her cheek, thumb tracing her skin with reverence. Then, without another word, he kissed her. It wasn't desperate this time, it was deep, sure, and full of the ache of everything. They had survived, but just as the moment deepened, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. They both spun toward the sound. Gabriel's eyes hardened. "Stay here," he ordered. She grabbed his arm. "No, I am not losing you again." They moved together down the hall. The guest room door was open. The window shattered, the boy gone. Gabriel froze, his breath sharp like a knife. "No," he whispered, then louder. "No." He ran to the window, shards crunching under his feet below. On the street, a black SUV disappeared into traffic. Lena grabbed his arm. "We can call the police." He shook his head. "They will not get there in time." She did this. Vanessa took him again. He turned and headed toward the private elevator. Lena followed as it descended into the underground garage. He opened a panel on the wall, revealing a hidden compartment inside. A small tracker beacon was blinking. "She took the car," he said quietly. "Good. I put a tracer under it before we left Monaco." They jumped into his car, the city blurring past as he followed. The signal. Lena's hands trembled against her lap, but her voice stayed steady. "You will get him back, Gabriel. You will not lose him again." He said nothing, eyes fixed on the screen. The red dot moving toward the river docks. When they arrived, the air was cold and thick with fog. The warehouse ahead looked abandoned. Gabriel moved fast, gun drawn. Lena followed close behind, her heart pounding. They stepped inside, the echo of footsteps surrounding them. Then a voice floated from the darkness, calm and cruel. "Welcome home, Gabriel." Vanessa stepped out dressed in black, her smile sharp as glass. "You really should have stayed away." "Where is he?" Gabriel demanded. She gestured to the shadows, and the boy appeared, held by two men. She smiled. "You have a choice, Gabriel. The designs or the child." Lena saw it in his eyes, the war between reason and love. He lowered the gun slowly. "You will not hurt him," she laughed. "That depends on how much you still love me." Lena couldn't stand it. She moved before thinking, grabbing a metal rod from the floor and striking one of the guards across the back. He fell. The other lunged for her. Gabriel reacted instantly, firing one clean shot. The echo shattered the silence. The guard fell. Vanessa screamed, fury twisting her face. She drew a gun, but Gabriel was faster. He shot the weapon from her hand, then stepped forward, his voice deadly calm. "It ends tonight." Vanessa fell to her knees. "You think killing me will bring back what we lost, Gabriel?" "No," he said quietly, "but it will stop you from taking what I love now." He turned away, taking his son into his arms. Lena, trembling beside him. By the time the sirens arrived, Vanessa was gone, leaving only smoke and silence. Behind, Gabriel looked at Lena, the boy safe between them, his voice breaking. "I am done running." Lena touched his face, tears mixing with rain. "Then stop running," she whispered, "and start living again." He pulled her close, holding her and the child together. As dawn broke over the river, the light washing away the darkness, for the first time in years, Gabriel Vance was free, and for the first time, he was not alone. The days after the rescue passed in uneasy quiet, the kind of stillness that hides a coming. Storm Gabriel kept his son close, rarely letting him out of sight, but something in his eyes told Lena he was not at peace. She noticed him walking the penthouse late at night, talking quietly on the phone to people she had never seen, his voice sharp. Clipped full of attention he tried to hide. One evening, while the boy was asleep, Gabriel stood by the window, staring down at the city lights, his reflection pale in the glass. Lena walked over the air between them, heavy with everything unspoken. "Haven't rested," she said softly. He didn't answer for a moment, then turned to her, his face drawn and tired. They found her body at the docks. Her breath caught Vanessa. He nodded. "The police say it was an accident, but we both know better someone." Wanted her gone before she could talk, before she could reveal who was really behind all of this. She stepped closer. "Are you saying someone else was controlling her?" Gabriel's jaw tightened. "The same investors who forced the crash, who bought the stolen designs, they are still out there, and now they know I am alive." He moved to the desk and opened the silver file again. Inside was a list of names and transfers, everything Vanessa had taken from him, but at the bottom was a new line, a single symbol of an organization. She had been working for a black serpent, marked with the initials CV Corporation. Vale, Lena whispered, remembering the name from old news articles, a global conglomerate that had gone silent years ago. Gabriel nodded. They call themselves Vale. They move through countries like shadows, buying and breaking whatever they touch. She could hear the exhaustion in his voice, but beneath it burned something new, vengeance. That night Gabriel left his son in her care and went to meet an old contact downtown. Lena couldn't sleep. She sat by the child's bedside until he stirred and whispered, "Where's my dad?" She smiled gently. "He will be back soon. He just went to fix something important." Hours later, the front door opened. Gabriel stumbled inside his shirt, torn blood on his sleeve. She ran to him, panic flooding her voice. "Gabriel, what happened?" He shook his head, breathless. "Someone followed me. They knew where I was." He fell to one knee. She caught him just before he hit the ground. She helped him to the couch, her hands trembling. "You need a doctor." He grabbed her wrist. "No doctors, they will trace the report." She pressed a towel against the wound. "You are bleeding too much." He caught her eyes, holding them steady. "You have to take my son and leave. If they come here, you run. Do you understand?" "No," she whispered. "I am not leaving you." Gabriel grabbed her hand, his voice low but urgent. "Lena, listen to me. I spent my life protecting what I owned. Now I only want to protect you." Tears burned her eyes. "I won't go anywhere without you," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "That's why I love you." Then his eyes fluttered shut. Lena called one of the private guards who helped patch him up. He wasn't fatally wounded, but the bullet had grazed his ribs by morning. He was awake again, the fever gone, but his expression grim. "They tried to kill me because I was close to uncovering their link to the government contracts. Vale is tied to people in power, people who cannot afford for the truth to come out. So what now?" she asked. "We disappear." Gabriel said quietly for a while, "But I cannot hide forever. When I come back, I will finish this." Lena took his hand and looked at him steadily. "Not alone," she said. "Whatever war you start, I will stand beside you." He hesitated, then nodded. "I believe you," he whispered. That night they made plans, new identities, safe houses, everything ready. But as they packed, Lena found something tucked under the silver file, a letter addressed to Gabriel in handwriting she did not recognize. She handed it to him. He opened it slowly, his face turning pale as he read. "What is it?" she asked. He looked up, eyes wide. The letter said, "The boy is not yours." For a long moment, silence filled the room. The world seemed to tilt. She shook her head. That cannot be true. Gabriel's voice was hollow. The DNA report inside says, otherwise Vanessa forged everything she used, the accident, the child, everything to break. Milena's heart cracked. She looked toward the room where the boy slept. What are you going to do? Gabriel's gaze turned cold and distant. I'm going to find out who he really belongs to and why they wanted me to believe he was mine. He turned away from the window, the city lights burning. Like fire in his reflection, the war was no longer about revenge. It was about truth, and in that truth, something darker waited a secret, powerful enough to destroy them both. The night the truth came out, the rain returned heavy and cold, sweeping across the city like it wanted to wash everything away. Gabriel stood by the window, staring into the storm. His hands clenched, the letter crumpled between them. Lena watched him from across the room, afraid to speak, afraid that anything she said might break what was left of him. So it was all a lie, he said quietly, his voice almost lost beneath the thunder. She took a step closer. Maybe not all of it, Gabriel, maybe she, only wanted you to think that. His head turned slowly, his eyes filled with pain and confusion. The tests, Lena, they said he isn't mine. The papers, the video, all of it was staged. She used me, used my grief to control me. He sank into the chair, his shoulders heavy, the fire inside him dimmed to ash. I built my life on truth, and I never saw the biggest lie right in front of me. Lena knelt in front of him, gently taking his hand. She could feel the tremor beneath his skin. Gabriel, look at me. That boy is not a lie. He is innocent. He loves you. That makes you his father. No one can change that. For a moment his eyes softened, but the darkness returned soon after. If Vale created this, they did it for a reason, he said slowly. They wanted me to destroy myself, and now I have nothing left to lose. He stood abruptly and opened the safe, pulling out a small flash drive. This holds everything I have on them, all their secrets, every crime, every false identity. The crash was never an accident. Lena, it was a test they needed to see how much I would endure before I broke. He turned toward her, his face pale but fierce. I am done hiding. I am going to expose them all. She grabbed his arm. You can't fight people like this alone. They will kill you before you even reach the press. Gabriel looked down at her, his voice low and steady. Then I die trying, but they don't get to win. Before she could argue, the lights flickered, then went out, the power cut again. Silence hung for a second too long. Then came the faint click of a door unlocking. Someone was inside. Gabriel's grip tightened around her hand. Stay behind me, he whispered, but she refused to let go. Footsteps echoed in the hall. A man's voice. Calm, familiar. You should have left it. Alone. Gabriel's heart froze. He knew that voice, his former business partner Daniel Royce, the one who had vanished after the crash, the one Vanessa had said was dead. Daniel, stepped into the dim light, his gun pointed at them. Vanessa thought she could control me, but she was weak. You were the threat I was told to remove. Gabriel moved slowly, positioning himself between Daniel and Lena, his voice cold and sharp. What do you want? Daniel smiled. I already have it. Vale paid me in power. All I need now is the drive. Gabriel raised his chin. Come and take it. The next moments moved in chaos. Daniel lunged the gun, firing. Gabriel tackled him, the shot missing by inches. The men crashed to the floor, fighting over the weapon Lena grabbed. The nearest object, a lamp, and smashed it against Daniel's arm. The gun clattered away. Gabriel kicked it across the room. Daniel slammed him into the wall, his hands around his throat. Lena screamed and threw herself at Daniel, pulling at his arm. Gabriel gasped for air and drove his elbow into Daniel's ribs, breaking free. He seized the gun from the floor and pointed it at him, his voice trembling. Give me one reason not to end this. Daniel laughed. Even now, you can't do it, that's why. You lost everything. Gabriel's finger hovered over the trigger, but then he lowered the gun. I won't become you, he said. Daniel's smile faded, replaced by rage. He lunged again. Another shot rang out, this time from behind. Daniel froze his eyes. Wide Lena stood there shaking the smoking gun in her hands. Gabriel caught her before she fell. She was crying, trembling uncontrollably. "I had to," she whispered. "He would have killed you." Gabriel pulled her close. "It's over." The sirens wailed in the distance, police lights flashing against the storm clouds. Gabriel handed them the drive and confessed everything about Vale and the crash. Weeks later, Vale was exposed. Powerful men and women arrested in one of the biggest scandals in years. Months past, the storm finally ended. Gabriel's wounds healed, though the scars on his heart remained. Lena stayed by his side through every trial, every headline, every sleepless night. When it was over, they bought a small house by the ocean, far from the noise, far from the ghosts. The boy still lived with them, his laughter filling the quiet corners of the house. One evening, Gabriel stood on the porch, watching the sunset, the boy chasing waves along the shore. Lena came out, holding 2 cups of tea. He turned to her, his face calm for the first time in years. "I used to think redemption meant erasing the past," he said softly. "Now I know it means learning to live with it." She smiled, setting her hand on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You didn't just find redemption, Gabriel, you created it." He took her hand and kissed it gently. "When I lost everything, I thought I was broken, but you taught me that being broken just means we have more room for light." As the sun dipped into the sea, the boy ran up to them laughing. Gabriel lifted him into his arms, and for a moment the world stood still. No more lies, no more war, only the sound of the waves and the quiet peace of a man who had finally come home. The storm had given him back his life, but love had taught him how to live it.